Welcome to a new transformative episode that delves into the depths of personal growth and redemption. I'm your host, Pat McCullough, and today we are joined by Bart Nollenberger, whose journey from addiction to purpose is nothing short of extraordinary. He is an author, leadership coach, and public speaker who has studied under experts such as Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, and Les Brown. In this raw, candid conversation, we explore the profound impact of Bart's upbringing, his battles with addiction, and the pivotal moments that led to his path of sobriety. Prepare to be moved as we jump into this episode. Listen now. Bart Nollenberger, thank you so much for being on the No Gray Areas podcast. We're going to jump right into it. So I just got done listing your accomplishments, and there's a lot of them, by the way. But my personal opinion is that maybe one of your biggest accomplishments or some of your biggest accomplishments were overcoming some of the difficulties in life. Yeah. Some of them that were done maybe by your own choosing, some of them that were done to you. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because this podcast, as you know, is built around the power and complexity of human choice, that we make our choices and eventually our choices make us. And so your life and actually your coaching, as we're going to get into, and all the things that you do, is really about helping people make choices, good choices.
Yes, it is.
But you've had to overcome some things.
Yeah. All to my own. I did them all.
Yeah.
And it was the way I looked at them. For example, I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood in Toledo, Ohio. My dad was a car dealer. My mama was a model. Yeah. When I turned 16, I had a new car. And I wrecked 6 of those babies in high school.
You wrecked 6 cars in high school?
6 cars. I was a bad driver.
Yeah.
And
it's, if you got it at 16, you're saying 2 of the 4 years in high school, you wrecked
exactly,
6 cars.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it wasn't that a deer jumped out in front of me or that the car had bad brakes. I was just stupid.
Yeah.
And I look at back when I was really young, I wanted to be somebody else. That was the thing. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a codependent. And when the first 10 years were amazing. But then at 11, 12, 13, I started looking at our family, and my dad's behavior was dysfunctional. His buddies were drunk. And I thought, well, that's cool. And I also saw people around me that I wanted to be like, and I didn't want to be me. So that started this journey. And nobody did it.
How old were
me.
you when you think, I mean, it was probably subconsciously that you were thinking that, but how old do you think you were when you started thinking, I want to be someone else?
Probably 11 or 12. Right after that, the first 10 years, I was fun. I was joyful. People laughed at me and all that. And then 11, 12, 13, we changed physically and I changed mentally.
Yeah.
I started thinking, oh no, I want to be a great basketball player. I sucked.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can say that here, but
absolutely you can. Yeah.
And I wanted to be this or that, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that first time that I drank, again, my choice.
That's probably true of a lot of people, don't you think?
You know
that
what?
There's a lot of people that,
Yeah.
especially those ages.
Well, especially now.
And you're not going to admit it. Like you're never going to go say that to someone, and maybe you don't even consciously know.
Right.
So you, first time you drank.
Yeah. And I want to say, add on to what you just said, think about how much you and I, not maybe you, but definitely I, compare ourselves to other people. Oh. And that's, for me, started at that time.
Yeah. One of the most detrimental things that we do as human beings, isn't it?
Isn't it, though?
I think so.
I
Because
do.
with that comes shame.
Yeah.
I'm not enough.
Yes.
I don't measure up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with that, as a lot of us do at that age, but then you're also in a fairly dysfunctional home?
Yeah, my dad I later found out, he ran a dealership. He'd leave at noon, go party with his buddies till 4, come home at 4, take a nap for 2 hours, and start drinking again. And of course, it progressed over the years.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how bad it was. But what I do know is that I wanted my dad's attention young, and I never got it. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was great at taking my brother and I out to ball games and fishing. My dad was non-responsive to any of that. My dad never said, I love you. And look, I've interviewed people in my podcast where people grew up by themselves where their parents were literally not there. Yeah. So my deal is not that big a deal, but I made a bigger deal of it. And I wanted attention. And I realized, man, I can be like my dad. I'm going to start, even though it was subconsciously at that point, I'm going to start drinking to get his attention.
Yeah.
And that first time I tapped into it, I thought, oh, this is cool. Tasted awful. And then I did it a couple times. And then the breaking point was, I think I was 13. I poured a full goblet of whiskey and a full goblet of rum, and I jugged both of them. And I
At 13?
At 13. And I walked down to what was called the Beehive, where I grew up in Perrysburg, Ohio. It was where all the young people got together. Dude, by the time I got down there, I wasn't walking, right?
You
It was a mess.
It was hitting you.
But what I remember was that I don't remember anything, but I do remember that everybody laughed at me, and I thought they were laughing with me. And I do remember everybody was giving me attention. And I thought, oh, this is great.
This is what you were craving.
And I do remember that I could tell them that I played basketball at another school, or I swam at an elite level at another swim club, and nobody would know the difference. Of course, they knew the difference.
Yeah.
But that was the delusion that I started living in. So I lived in fantasy in so many ways in that area, that from 10 to 20, and fantasy carried on beyond that. But
Did you, I'm curious, at that time, your dad's drinking. Did you know he was drinking? Like, was it evident to you?
Yeah.
Did you hate that about him? Because
I
I think a lot of times we become what we hate, right? We're like,
Yeah.
I'll never be like my dad, but then we start doing what makes us like our dad.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's funny because, again, what did I want? I wanted him to say, hey, I love you. Hey, let's go to a ball game. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
My mom died at 97. I brought her to Christ a week before she died.
Really?
Yes. Cool
Really?
story.
Yeah.
And she was at every one of my swim meets. She was always there. But my mom was kind of the Joan Crawford. If you remember that movie years ago with Joan, No Wire Hangers.
Yeah.
Everything had to be perfume on the pig. Everything had to be in its place.
Yeah.
And she was an incredible enabler. And
Which is why she stayed with your dad and
Yes.
put up with all that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She found her own self in her early 60s, but she was in the shadow of that for a long time.
Yeah.
Even though she was an entrepreneur, she was a model. So she had perfume on her pig too, right?
Uh-huh.
She had that mask on.
Yeah.
Everything was great in our household, never a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we had probably 50 mirrors in our house, and
Really?
it was how you looked. It wasn't what was going on the inside.
So you were kind of learning this whole idea, like what you started doing at 13 then, like living in a fantasy world, or as you said, putting perfume on a pig, right? Or it almost kind of came natural for you in a way.
Yeah.
What was modeled to you?
Yes. And, a few years ago, came to the realization I was narcissistic. And I hate the word, and I hate the title, I hate the label, but that was really who I was. And every time I see behavior now that's all about me and not all about we, then I realize, that's a little bit of that creeping in. But we lived in a definite narcissistic household.
Yeah. And you're saying a few years ago that came out.
Everything's progress, right?
I know. Well, that's what I was just going to say, Bart. I think that's such an important thing. Like, none of us are going to arrive in this life, right? Like, you, as people continue to hear your story, they're going to find out that you overcame a lot of things.
Yes.
But then you're mentioning, well, a couple years ago, this came to, and
Yes.
it's the same thing with me right now. I turned 52 here in about 2 weeks, and I feel like Jesus school never ends, right?
Yes.
Like, we're never going to graduate from that one, or getting us to where we could or potential. It's just not going to arrive. So that's interesting that you say that. Yeah. So, okay, so you're starting some pretty addictive behaviors.
Absolutely.
At a young age.
Yeah, really was. And it was always about what I realized a few months ago. You talk about new ideas and new thoughts that pop up. I got diagnosed officially as having ADD. I mean, you would think I'd known it all those decades, but it was official. And I had ADD as a young person too, but it's not the same ADD. My ADD was attention deficit disorder, yes, but it was, I need attention. Look at me.
Yeah.
I want to be on stage. I want to be front and center. That was always what it was for me.
Yeah.
Not only couldn't I focus, but that was a subset.
Yeah.
It was, I want you to look at me. I need you to notice.
You need the applause. You need the affirmation.
100%.
You need to be noticed.
Yeah.
And the alcohol helped with that. You're saying, like, when you started drinking that, it helped. Okay.
It did. It made me feel like I was somebody different than I was.
Yeah.
Later, I found other drugs, and every drug that I took made me feel different than who I wanted to be. I didn't want to be who I was because I didn't like me.
Would you agree with this statement? You don't have to, but that a lot of times a chemical addiction, there's another underlying addiction that we
Yeah.
probably have?
100%.
Yeah. So your underlying addiction was this desperate need for affirmation and
Yes.
applause and being, but then
Yeah.
all the other chemical things that
Yeah.
came into your life
Yeah.
were to try to get that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came from wanting dad to notice
Yeah,
you, right?
exactly. And then later it was getting attention from girls. I mean, that ended up being the addiction as well. But staying in that high school period, I again wrecked a lot of cars. I was a mess. I went to college. I actually swam in high school, but I didn't get a scholarship. I went to college and tried out for the swimming team at Ohio University, and I made the team, but my grades weren't good enough, so I didn't get to swim. And I spent that year at Ohio University drinking and just being a nightmare.
So it was just partying.
Yes.
Partying, yeah.
I went to college, I went to Florida after that, lifeguard on the beach. And that was obviously an experience.
Yeah.
But the whole time I was drunk most of the time, or high or numb.
Yeah.
I remember one.
So you're 19 years old,
Yeah,
and you have some serious addictions going on.
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Had anybody at this point confronted you on it yet? Is anybody saying like, Bart, you got, or is everybody's enabling you?
Yeah. They were.
Just typically at that age, you don't have a lot of people helping and a lot of enablers.
Exactly.
Right?
I didn't even know what AA was or any of the A's. All I knew was this is how I could cope, how I lived life. And why did I do it? What was the root? I wanted attention. I wanted to be somebody different than I was.
When did you get that? When did you realize that? Like, I don't think you were realizing that at that moment,
Yes.
right? You weren't. Were you in your 30s, 40s? When do you think you?
I realized that when I was really young, I wanted to be different. I pretended that I was somebody different. And I loved basketball in high school, but I never made the team. I tried out in the 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, went to a lot of basketball camps, practiced all the time, but I never made the team. And that was an identity for me. So I would pretend I was Greg Weber, who lived in the town over. I mean, I just didn't like who I was looking in the mirror or who I was when I was by myself. It was always somebody else. I dreamed I was Pete Maravich. I mean, I always lived in this fantasy.
If there's a younger listener, they may not know that name, but that you and I both know one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I think you could argue no one played college basketball at the level that he did. Yeah.
Google
so
it.
you dreamed of being a Pete Maravich.
Yeah. And I wasn't, nowhere close. But I would tell people if I wasn't with them, I was.
Yeah.
Right. And the funny part about all of this is, again, my dad was a car dealer. Every time I wrecked a car, I got another one. Nobody really held me accountable. They were, and my mom, again, loving, but never taught me how to be an adult. Not her fault. That was on me, right? My dad never said, I love you. Never taught me how to be an adult because they never held me accountable. So I moved to Florida and they got me a van when I moved to Florida. Talk about enabling, right?
Yeah.
And when I hear people growing up in the streets or the ghetto, I so respect that because that's not where I grew up. It was upper middle class, had every advantage that any human being could have. Really, I did. We had boats. We traveled all the time. He had houses in Florida. Spoiled rich kid. That's what I was.
Yeah.
And I had this van that my parents had got me for Christmas. I mean, it's so embarrassing. Had red shag carpet, had Budweiser beanbag chair. I mean, this was
This is
a
not
wagon.
what you needed at that time.
No. And I remember that I was partying with my roommate and he and I got in a fight. The next morning, the van was gone. He had stolen it. And I called home to mommy and daddy. Now, at this time, I'm 21, right? Come on. And I called home and I said, my van got stolen. What do you think they said?
No.
We're going to bring another one. I swear they
So
did.
the enabling is going on. Yeah.
And then 2 days later, they got a credit card bill. And it was the credit card that they'd given me for my trip. Use it if you need to. I put $10,000 on that credit card, and they said, we're not bringing you in the van. I had to live in Florida by myself for 2 months without a van. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's a tough life. That was,
I mean,
that was a reality check for you.
It's about time.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I had reality checks by not making teams, but finally, I learned a little bit about what it means to be an adult. And that behavior happened till I had a daughter. All right. She was born in 1984. Her name is Tiffany. I was 27 when she was born. And I loved her. And of course, I mean, we have a kid. I remember holding her And in the picture, I looked awful. I weighed 150 pounds, doing $5,000 of cocaine a month. Just a mess, doing every other drug but heroin. And I looked at myself in that picture. I remember back then, I thought, that is not good. It was probably one of the first times when I'd seen it from the outside.
Yeah.
And I knew I loved her, but I didn't know how to do any of that. 6 months later, I ran into a friend of mine, Bobby Joe. And Bobby Joe was clean and sober. And leave it to me to look at my friend and say, man, you look good. That's just how I judge.
Was he a guy
everything.
that you used to pay a party with?
Yes.
Okay, so you're seeing like this different. Okay. Yeah.
I said, dude, what happened to you? You look great. And he said, I went to the Adrian Center, which was in Santa Cruz, California, where I lived at the time. And he said, I got sober. I said, oh, that's cool. I acted like I didn't care, right? And then as soon as we were done talking, I called the Adrian Center, set up an appointment, sat down in front of Reba, who was the director of the program, and told her that I wanted to come in. And she said, great, just give me 30 days, 24/7. I said, I can't do that. I'm a finance manager at this point at a car dealership.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm too busy. She said, well, I can't help you. I walked out of there crying like a newborn and then did nothing. 6 months later, got fired from a job. Next morning, woke up in tears again, called that treatment center, and within 2 hours, got that one bed they had left and checked in.
And that was your first time to ever do anything with treatment?
First time.
And you're 28?
28.
Yeah.
June 15th, 1985.
Yeah.
I was in there 2 weeks, and my counselor came up to me and he said, Bart, you're narcissistic. You're not taking this seriously. All the things that were brought up to me many times. And he said, I don't think you're going to make it. I think you're going to fail. And I was so mad at him, Pat, I want to punch him in the nose.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I'm in front of the mirror, getting ready to go talk to him again. And there's something in my pocket. And I reached in, and it was a gram of cocaine. And I'm in treatment, right?
You're in treatment with a gram of cocaine in your pocket.
And I opened it, and I looked at it, and I flushed that baby down the toilet and said, take that, Gus.
Yeah.
That was the counselor?
Yeah. Yep.
2 weeks later, I graduated. And today, I have, by the grace of God, 13,894 days. It's probably not the exact number, but I've got over 38 years of sobriety one day at a time.
Man, Bart.
Because of that. Yes.
Congrats, man.
Praise.
Yeah.
Praise.
So that actually took an interesting twist for me because, I've known a lot of people with chemical addictions. I think we all have addictions, right?
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, there was someone that I knew who said to me once, they were talking about a person who was going back in for another treatment. Mm-hmm. And they said, I just don't understand how someone could be addicted to anything. And I didn't say this to him at the time, but if I could go back, I would go, what are you talking about? We all have some kind of addictions. It may not be a chemical addiction. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. But most of the people that I know that have chemical addictions, some close friends, it took a couple of runs at the hill.
Yeah.
You're one you went to
shot.
treatment?
Yep.
That's an abnormal story, isn't it?
Well, here's what I did.
Hey, from your No Gray Areas team, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. And if you're loving this episode, would you just take a moment and leave us a review and rating on whatever platform you're listening from? If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the new podcast episodes that drop every other Wednesday. By leaving a review and subscribing, you help others discover our podcast's inspirational messages to effectuate positive change in their lives. Okay, let's jump back into this episode.
Well, here's what I did. For one thing, I didn't know Jesus. My parents were Unitarians. All I knew is I did get on my knees and pray to a God I didn't know.
Yeah.
And every morning I followed the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Whatever it said, I did. I got a sponsor, went to 90 meetings in 90 days. There's a third step prayer that goes like this. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power and thy love and thy way of life. Every morning, on my knees, every day, without fail.
So you took this seriously.
I took it serious, and I did what it was told to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was an alcoholic, but I knew I was a drug addict. Yeah. And once I was in that treatment center, I thought, oh yeah, I did wreck 6 cars in high school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did drink every day. Oh yeah. Oh, my dad is an alcoholic. I get it. And I realized I didn't want to be that way anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And it was a transformation. But as many people do, I flipped.
You traded addictions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I flipped to sexual integrity issues. I found porn when I was 14. I was on that path, but it wasn't the one that was front and center. But I had sexual integrity issues.
Yeah.
And I continued the same behavior until 10 years later. Actually, not true. It lasted longer than that. But 10 years later, Pat, I'm in Santa Cruz, California, 10 years sober from drugs and alcohol. But I was married at the time, not a good husband, not a good father. I was angry. I hated myself. I was a flirt. I was, again, back to narcissist. I was addicted to porn. I was addicted to attention. And I happened to be driving down the street and I looked into a parking lot. There was a lot of nice Mercedes in that parking lot. So I turned in, Santa Cruz Bible. I went in and I heard this rock and roll. And I thought, man, these guys are good.
Mm-hmm.
You get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I sat down in the back of the room and I heard Chip Ingram talk about Romans 12:2. Don't be the same person.
Yeah.
Don't conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
And dude, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I knew he was talking to me. And that started the path. That church had to Celebrate Recovery. I went to Celebrate Recovery. I told them I got a sponsor for my sexual integrity issues. And everything turned around like that. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. So I have to correct myself. It did not.
Yeah.
It did not. Unfortunately, I'm saying this because I wish it had. I kept up the same behavior for a long, long time. But eventually...
The sexual integrity issues.
But eventually, I got baptized. I was a hypocritical probably for the first 10 years that I was a believer. I would say in church, praise Jesus and go cuss and do everything I used to do at a car dealership outside of there. I kept doing the same thing, going to massage parlors and looking at porn. But I knew I hated it. And I kept hating it more and more and more. And I wouldn't give up, Pat. I wouldn't give up. I kept showing up to Celebrate Recovery. I kept going to recovery meetings. I kept talking to men. And it started to take root.
Yeah. So you were fighting. You were a hypocritical, as you said.
Yes.
But you were also fighting during that time. There was some battling going on.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I've often said that the most miserable people on this planet are usually Jesus followers that aren't living right, because Romans 8:9 says, as you know, we're people of faith, that once we've accepted Jesus, the Spirit of God is in us.
Yes.
So when we're dabbling in things that we shouldn't be doing, we're more miserable than the typical person because we have the Spirit of God in us, and those don't sit right. And we deep in our spirit, we know that, right?
Yes.
So that's what you were living for quite a few years.
Yeah. Well, and because of that behavior, about 5 years after I went to that church, my wife at the time, who mothered four of my kids, all four of my kids, who I respect because of what a great mom she is. My kids adore her. But my behavior killed that relationship.
Yeah.
And it was a wake-up call, and yet I didn't learn right away. I had to keep doing the same behavior. But where I felt I really grew was when I sat in front of a therapist and I said, I want to stop this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was in tears. I had these moments, right?
Yeah.
The moment of going to rehab, the moment of driving by the church. And this was another moment. And he was a therapist, and he said to me, you need my intensive program. And what I would say to anybody is, if a therapist says you need an intensive program, you got to go get out of there fast.
An intensive program. Yeah.
And it was his cabin in the woods. I lived in Gig Harbor, Washington at the time. It was a cabin in the woods. And it was, he said, you're going to go off the grid for 30 days. All you're going to take is a Bible, pens, and paper.
Wow.
He said, you'll meet with me an hour a day during the week, and I'll give you some homework. And he said, then you're on your own on weekends.
I love how your life has gone from a van by the ocean to a cabin in the mountains. A lot in between there.
Exactly.
But so you're up there and kind of stripped away from everything but the woods and some writing utensils.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and again, I didn't really know Jesus. I dabbled. I said I would do it. And I took 30 days of food, put it in the refrigerator. And I walked in the cabin. The first time I saw the cabin, I thought, I've been lied to. This is not a cabin. It's a shack. There was a hole in the floor and a crack in the wall.
Wow.
And there was a little fireplace about 10 feet away with a rocking chair in front of it. A bathtub that was probably 4 feet big, and I'm 6'2", so it was a little tough.
You're folded up in that thing.
And there was a round kitchen table, and that's it, with the refrigerator. And guess what? The first thing I did was sat in front of that fireplace and cried.
Yeah.
That was happening a lot.
Yeah.
And then I started opening up the Bible. And I wrote about my relationships with the people that I had in the past, my mom and the struggles I had had with her at times, and where I felt she was manipulative or she wasn't affectionate enough. My dad, who never gave me any attention. My brother, who was better looking and smarter and more successful. And my relationships. And I wrote about all of them, and I talked to my therapist about all of them. And after 30 days, I graduated from that cabin. It took me time, but the slow drip was starting to take over my soul. My mama used to always say to me, Bart, you're going to be a late bloomer, which means you're not worth anything yet. But she would never say that. She was very loving.
Yeah.
But you're going to be a late bloomer. And man, she was prophetic about that. That is so true. And I did. I started to get it. I started to be okay being single. I stopped doing the behavior I did before. And then I'm in church, Cornerstone Church, going to celebrate recovery, doing all I'm supposed to do, serving, and I met someone. And by that time, I'd had some singleness, and I met the woman of my dreams.
Yeah.
Mary. I did not deserve her.
Yeah.
God doesn't give us what we deserve. God gives us incredible grace.
It's true.
And I have had incredible grace.
Yeah. How long have you been married?
I met this woman that is on staff at church, married to a doctor previous, had 6 kids. She was single, of course.
So you have 10 kids between you.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
And I met her and we talked and I thought, oh, she's amazing. And then we started to date a bit. And she was praying to God that if I wasn't the one, that God would show her. And I still had a lot of cooking to do. I still had a lot of work to do. I wasn't the man that she deserved to have. But for some reason, God kept this thing together. And the result was a year later, we got married on the beach in Carlsbad, California, Oceanside, actually.
Yeah.
In front of our friends. And Lynn Winters was the one that married us.
Yeah.
And I would say, has it been perfect? No. Have I been stupid? Absolutely. But she has been there the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's funny how I came from the brokenness to this place of peace now. I get in my front yard, my backyard every morning, and I hang out with God. And I write down my values every day, and I get in the Word every day. And the other day I was thinking about this, Pat. I wanted to be Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on stage, I want everybody to notice me. Now my career is dealing with people one-on-one and teaching them leadership. Mm-hmm. I didn't like one-on-ones. I didn't want to get to know people that. Yeah. Now I'm a coach, and I get to really find out what their soul is themselves.
Isn't it interesting how you were just wired to want to help people, right? Like that was just something but the stage where there was something healthy and unhealthy about that, right? Because you were talking, you're craving attention and everything. But yet God has still put you in a place where you're getting to do things. I actually, by the way, think that almost anybody on a stage, if they're really honest, I spent a lot of years on stages too.
Very good.
Most of the time before I would walk out on the stage, I would say, I would quote that John 3 passage, may you increase and may I decrease.
Amen.
And God forgive me for the part of me that I know is craving the attention.
Yes.
Because my drug of choice is yours. So when you're telling me your story, I'm going, boy, it took me a long time. It was in my 40s before I began to understand that. Mm-hmm. But if I could draw a picture and have me strung out, my head back, and a needle in my arm, it would say attention or applause. Desperately needed that and craved it.
Yeah.
I think that if someone doesn't know what's written on that needle,
that's so good.
They're in danger, wouldn't you say? Because
again,
we all have something.
Yeah.
Part of your struggle in life was God's grace revealing to you some things that were very broken and helping you heal.
Yes.
He's done the same for me. Man, I would really recommend to our audience, if you can't name what's written on that needle that's in your arm, you need to do a little bit of exploring with God.
Yeah. In 2013, I joined the John Maxwell team. I was doing sales training. I had my own business. I'd been in automotive for a long time. And the reason I got in automotive is because my dad was in automotive.
Yeah.
And you know what? I will say it right here. I'm not shy of saying it. I hated automotive.
Really?
But I was following a dead man and wanted to get the dead man's approval. And that was my dad.
And Bart, that is a deep statement,
Yep,
what you just said. You're
100%.
following a dead man, trying to get a dead man's approval.
Yeah. How many of us have done that? And now I get Jesus' approval. And I really deeply mean that. So what happened was I love the people in the industry. I still do it today. I teach leaders, managers in that industry how to be great leaders. But you know what happens? What's so fascinating, here's this guy who's been married before, was lousy in marriage, but today has a marriage that I adore. As a matter of fact, if somebody asked me, what do you do for a living? I'd probably say, well, first of all, I'm a father and a husband. Mm-hmm. That's what I do first. And then I happen to do coaching. But what I find fascinating about helping managers be leaders, usually they're men, not always, but probably 90%, is that, and I have a 3-month program I put them through based on John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader.
Yeah.
And it's so good, so rich. But they usually tell me, I do group and I also do one-on-one. Most of them in the one-on-one will say, I got to tell you, I'm a lot nicer to my wife now. I give my wife the attention she deserves. I don't crush her with my attitude now.
So it's going way beyond just in the workplace.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's being obedient.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's listening to what God has to say.
Yeah.
When I, in 13, learned about Maxwell, I dabbled in it and did sales training and threw his concepts in there. But I've just had a few things that have happened over the last 10 years that have changed everything. In 2014 at Cornerstone, I really wanted to help start a Celebrate Recovery. And if you don't know what Celebrate Recovery is, 12-step program based on the principles, the higher power is Jesus Christ.
Because we all have hurts, habits, and hangups.
Amen.
Right? Isn't
100%.
That's the core.
Everybody's got life issues, right?
Yep.
It's not just for addicts. Only 30% of the people in the program are addicts.
Yep.
Although you and I know everybody's an addict.
Everybody's an addict.
It's the first page of what I'm going to tell you in a minute. But in that, they couldn't find the room to start that Celebrate Recovery. But God had put it in my heart to start it, right? Unfortunately, I got pushed back, and they couldn't find the room physically to do it back then. So I moved on and still went to Celebrate Recovery and still had that in my heart to lead Celebrate Recovery. In 2015, too, I was at the Caleb Fan Awards. And I met a young man named Stephen Copeland. Stephen had written 14 books, done ghost writing and collaboration for a number of books, one for Michael Vick, one of them for a basketball coach who had cancer at North Carolina, a female basketball coach. He had one for Hendrick's Race Crew, who talks about what it means to be a pit crew in NASCAR.
Yeah.
Incredible. And I told him my story, and he said, that's a book. Now, here I am with this low self-esteem. I'm thinking, yeah, right. Well, I'm not a slow study. My mama said I'm going to be a late bloomer. Talk about self-fulfilling. A few years later, I said, Stephen, I'm ready. And Stephen and I collaborated on the book. And he's nowhere to be found on the book because he didn't want to be. He said, this is your book. But he took all my information and he showed me how to bring it together into a book. And that was 2016, 17, 18, 19. Finally, this year, 2023, we launched the book, Keep the Change.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me. I didn't want to do this. I wanted to be Tony Robbins. It was taking the 12 Steps of Recovery, founded by Bill and Bob in Akron, Ohio. And
early 1900s, right? Yeah.
And taking these steps and using them, telling my story about the 12 steps. But what I realized is they're great personal development stories.
Yeah.
They're great leadership stories. Yeah. Step 1, I admit. Step 2, came to believe. Step 3, made a decision. Step 4, do an inventory. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And I would have never thought to do this. It was God. It was a still small voice that turned into a shout to do this. So the book came out. Also, 2 years ago, Mary and I decided we wanted to try the Celebrate Recovery again at Cornerstone. And we got leaders together for a year, Pat, in our house on every Sunday. We cooked them dinner. We had 14 people in the room. I told Rick Linneman this story. Rick was a small church pastor at Cornerstone at the time. And he said, you should start a Celebrate Recovery at Cornerstone. And with Rick's help, finding us a room, a year ago, we started Celebrate Recovery at Cornerstone. Our anniversary is September 12th. I did my testimony on September 11th last year. Mary did her testimony September 12th this year. Now, Mary doesn't have hurts, habits, and hangups, but Mary is in a very competitive field called commercial real estate.
Yeah.
She came alongside me because she loves me. Are you kidding me? She was married to a doctor before. She came next to a car salesman, loved me, and said, we're going to start this together. I'm going to do it with you. She came along my side.
Wow.
And she said, I don't have any issues. These are yours, but I'm coming along. And she found out she had some stuff. She was comparing herself. And that was the thing that she really had to look at.
She actually did have some hurts, habits, and
And she absolutely, and came. And what I know is this, God is so funny. I thought he was bringing me to Celebrate Recovery so I could change the Cornerstone Celebrate Recovery world. It was about Mary. The women that admire Mary and look at her and have learned and grown in Celebrate Recovery because of her, I can't even tell you how many women have been changed.
Wow.
And I realized, God, you are funny.
Yeah,
you brought me to bring her.
Yeah. Well, and you guys just a couple of weeks ago, you were able to, part of that Celebrate Recovery, you did something that was amazing, right? To get to experience and witness, right? What was that?
Oh, yeah. We do these leadership
I saw it on
meetings.
the social media.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we do these leadership meetings at our home, and we still do them. We did them every week for a year, but we do them every month now. And I give Mary all the credit for this. She said, let's have Thanksgiving and let's have baptisms.
Yeah.
And we had 3 people get baptized in our hot tub. I got to lead that.
Yep.
And it's, again, me?
Yeah.
Come on. A wretch like me?
Yeah.
It's got to be God.
God's
it just doesn't
favorite
happen.
people to use,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I heard someone once say that if you really, the people, if you look in history and in the Bible, the people that God uses in a powerful way are people that were crushed.
Yeah. Amen.
And the crushing might be someone else doing it to us. A lot of times it's our own doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In fact, I've said before, I can actually sit down if we were going to sit down one-on-one at a meal and you have a conversation with somebody for about 30 minutes, you can kind of tell if they've gone through their crushing yet.
Yeah. Amen.
Right? Because we'll all have them.
Yeah.
We live long enough.
Yes.
But you can tell if someone's gone through their
Yes.
crushing.
I think there's a
It's very evident sitting here with you, Bart, that you've had a couple of crushings.
Yeah.
Even the tears that, we're all wired a little
Yeah.
differently, but I can just see your gratitude toward God and where he's brought you and what he's brought you out of.
And I heard Brett say this a lot, my friend Brett Hatchett, who's been on your show. And it's about being obedient.
Yeah.
I hear the people that I know that aren't necessarily, I don't know if they're even believers, but they're talking about being obedient. And I know I would not be here and I wouldn't be anywhere if I wasn't obedient.
Yeah.
I was obedient to the book. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I was obedient to Celebrate Recovery. I didn't want to do that. I've been obedient to being the best I can be in my marriage. And I have slipped and slid and all that, but I know how important that is. There's 2 things that have happened in my life that are real evident. One is I hated addiction. When I hated the sexual integrity piece, just hated it with everything, I changed. It took a while, but I had to hate it. The same thing in terms of my behavior that might sabotage. I have to hate it. When I hate the behavior, I'll do anything possible to get to the other side of it. And that's where the growth has come from. One thing I want to just bring up, I live by what I call the laws of transformation. And the laws of transformation are, number 1, who am I? Knowing ourselves deeply. You mentioned that earlier. We've got to know what's written on that needle.
Yeah.
And we've got to know who we are and where we are. It's imperative. And I do that in my coaching. I start with that. Let's get to know who you are deeply. I've spent a lifetime doing that. The next piece is, what do we want? And I hope I'm saying, God, where do you want me? Right? And the next piece too is, why do we want it? And asking God why. God, why do you want me there is okay. We might not hear it, but it's okay to ask. And then the next part is, what am I doing to get in the way? What am I doing to sabotage this? I have to know that. So where am I? What do I want? And bringing God into all this. Why? And what am I doing to sabotage? But there's one scripture, a couple scriptures that really have been everything. Romans 12:2 we talked about.
Yeah.
But Psalm 139, 22, 24, man. Right? Search my God and know my heart.
Yeah.
And I love that scripture because what it forced me to do is, God, where am I with you?
But just really
God, where do you want me?
open, just completely open. Right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I want to have that relationship with God. And I'm believing that I do. I try to spend a lot of time with God. God, how am I doing? What am I doing here? Where do you want me? Well, what am I doing to get in the way of our relationship?
Yeah.
And I constantly want to ask God those questions.
Yeah.
Because this season, Pat, where I am, who knows, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not younger, I'm older.
Who knows how long you have, how much runway, right? Right. We're all there.
There's so much I want to accomplish. But I just want to make sure it's what he wants me to accomplish. It's not boats and planes and cars, although it'd be nice, but that's not it.
Yeah.
It's not it. It's where he wants me to accomplish in this moment. But what I realized was, hey, the reason I didn't have that Tony Robbins success or, written 20 books is because I wasn't ready for it, man.
Yeah.
If I had had that kind of praise, narcissistic Bart would not have been able to handle it. I would have died. I would have killed it.
Yeah.
And he's given me enough, just enough to use me in the way he needs to use me without me flying off and going the other direction.
Yeah. Bart, I'll tell you, just sitting here with you and hearing you explain, first of all, it's clear what a great coach you would be. You bring so much energy and passion. I mean, part of that passion is just your own life, right? How you've seen your own life transformed, and you want to see that in other people's lives. Yep. In our last moments here, though, in our last minutes here, the book, they can see it there, but Keep the Change. Love the title of that. Using the 12 steps to become a better leader in every area of life. Give me one example. Grab one of those 12 steps and talk about how does that help, not just somebody in their business world, but in their personal life. How would that help? Because years ago, I thought a great sermon series at a church would be to actually preach through the 12 steps.
Amen.
I mean, it is a great, because they apply to every human being, not just someone with a chemical addiction. So use an example. Grab any one you want.
And I will do a little plug for me. That's my vision that I believe God's taken me next year, is to speak at churches and talk about the story, but also the 12 steps and how they come together in a road to walk side by side with him. I think it always goes back very simply to step one. If you and I can't admit, if we're in denial, in denial, of course, is not a river in Egypt.
Yep.
If we're in denial, if we don't see it, if we've got blind spots, until we get through the clarity and admit we can't move to 2, 3, 4, and all the way down the line.
Yeah.
And I think admission is everything. And I've prayed every day. It's the prayer. God, reveal my blind spots.
Yeah.
Reveal those things that get in my way of my relationship with you.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I get this feeling, the spirits just envelop me, if that's a word,
Absolutely.
And surrounding me and in me. And I'm, again, walking in that day by day, moment by moment. Now, let's be real. I'm a human. I have a master's in stupidity and a doctor in dumb. So I tend to sometimes follow that. But here's the difference between then and now. I don't stay there.
Yeah.
Before I'd stay for months and sometimes years. Now it's moments. And it's because of that relationship. I know exactly what to do in that moment. God, you revealed a blind spot. I've gone off the wrong way. Jesus, help me.
Yep.
And in that moment, I turn.
And you're always running back to a God with open arms, right?
Yes.
Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. That was what helped me to learn to keep shorter accounts. That's what I tell people, similar to what you say. I go, I think the only difference between the younger Pat and the older Pat in some ways is I run to God a lot quicker than I used to when I make mistakes, because I still make them. But it was understanding I'm never running to a God who has his arms folded. It's just waiting to punish me. He's got his arms open wide, saying, "Welcome back, son."
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
And you've definitely learn that and understand
Yeah.
that. Yeah. How do people get a hold of you? How do they connect with you? I would love, again, you were talking about how you want to speak on stages. If people have ways to leverage that, because your story is a powerful story, with coaching, with the book, tell us how to get it connected to you.
Well, I've got BartNollenberger.com, also JohnMaxwellGroup.com/Bart Nollenberger. That shows what I'm doing with them. To get the book, you go to keepthechangebook.org. It is not available on the Big A yet, but it will be on there soon.
Okay.
But right now, it's keepthechangebook.org is where you get the book. I'm on Facebook at Bart Nollenberger. I'm on Instagram at Bart Nollenberger, and on LinkedIn at Bart Nollenberger, and YouTube on Bart Nollenberger.
Do you still do coaching? Like, if people wanted to reach out? And
Absolutely. Yeah. That is where I think I've got 16 coaching clients this month. And I'm going to one right now. I do deep coaching with people. It's where my passion comes from. It's where the connection comes from. It's where God is using me. Yeah. I love doing coaching.
I highly recommend coaching for me. Some people are maybe dealing with some really, really traumatic, difficult thing. They need to go into deep therapy and do that. But I say everybody should go find a coach of some kind. Someone's gonna help you get further in life faster than you might have on your own, right?
Therapy is going backwards. A good therapist asks great questions, right?
Yeah.
A good coach does that too. And I teach leaders how to be coaches. When you can ask questions, there's a wise saying that said, a man or woman convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And when you and I direct somebody to do something, they're probably not getting it. But when we ask questions and they come from their unconscious or conscious, and come up with the answer themselves, then they can own it.
Yeah.
And man, that's what I get to do for a living in coaching, and what I get to do in recovery as well. So I'm absolutely a fan. It's been talking about today and the future, not just the past.
Yeah. That's so powerful. That if people are listening and watching this, they couldn't see me. I was smiling really big when you were just saying that, because I always have carried around a little notebook that I take notes in. And I was thinking, man, if I spent much time with Bart, I'd be filling that notebook up a lot. You just drop these little nuggets of truth, a lot of them. So really valuable. I can tell that you'd be a great coach. Well, Bart, one of the fun ways that we finish every one of our podcasts is we do 2 truths and a lie. And it's ironic because we call this No Gray Areas. I'm asking you to lie. But the audience has heard you for about 45 minutes to an hour now. I've been listening to you. See if you can stump us, and we'll get to know you a little bit better. So give us 3 statements. 2 of them will be truths. 1 will be a lie. I got to guess the lie.
Okay. So I was a used car salesman for about 20 in the automobile business for 40 years, and a used car salesman, and had my own used car dealership. And also, that's one statement. I also have, between my wife and I, we've already mentioned it, we have 10 kids. And we also have 5 grandkids. Also, I joined the John Maxwell team in 2013, and I've got, I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team now, and a DISC behavior specialist, as well as get to speak all over about leadership.
Okay. The last one's true. Because I read your bio. I cheated on that one. I cheated on that one. I didn't know you did the DISC assessment too, though. I mean, those personality, it's so good. We started doing that with our kids when they were in high school. It just helped them figure out, like, how when God, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. So start identifying, how did God made you? So I highly recommend people 100%. Grab numerous different personality and look into it. But you do that as well. Okay, so I got that one. Your first one, I know you've been doing the car sales thing. I'm going to say the middle one's a lie, because if you got 10 kids, you got to have more than 5 grandkids.
Yeah, and there's a little truth to that. I might have brought that up earlier. But the reality is, we've got, again, Mary has 6, I have 4, we have 10. And when we go out to dinner, there's 35 chairs that need to be at the table because of spouses and kiddos. And so we actually are there. One of Mary's daughters is having a baby. He should be here in January, and that'll give us 12.
Congratulations.
So we are more than blessed.
Congratulations. I have my 7th grandchild coming in April.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Isn't it grandchildren? There's a whole nother level. Like you can't explain to someone until they get there. Like
No.
there's something that it's
No.
one of the most beautiful
And
gifts from God in this planet.
It's fun to do it young, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I say that for you, not necessarily me. But
no.
man, they keep you young.
They do.
It's
They
a gift.
do. It's so beautiful. And I
Yeah.
think I often tell people, I think one of the things that's beautiful about it is the things that I got so uptight and worried about as a parent.
Yeah.
After you live some years, you go, it's not that big of a deal. They're having a bad day. I have bad days. It's just like, they're not going to end up in prison because they didn't want to eat their meal tonight.
Yeah. I mean, again, so interesting that God doesn't always do what we want. He does what he needs us to do to grow us and to be who we need to be. Man, I never thought I would have 12 grandkids. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, when I'm sitting in the backyard and look at the amazing grace, these aren't things I deserve. They're his amazing grace. Yeah. I wouldn't change anything. Yeah. I would change nothing about my life. I have a life of peace today. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus.
Love your attitude of gratitude that just oozes out of you, my friend. You, all right. Well, thank you, Bart, for being on here. Appreciate what you're doing and the impact that you're making. The lives are being transformed. Likewise, keep at it, my friend.
You know what's so cool? We get to know each other. And you're going to be on my podcast, Keep the Change, too. Good. And I got I'm so glad we get to know each other. That's the gift of doing these, isn't it?
It is.
Deeply.
It is. Good.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Bart.
Appreciate you.
As we wrap up this profoundly inspiring episode with Bart, we hope you are reminded that transformation is a journey, not a destination. And Bart's story is a testament to the strength that lies within us to overcome even the darkest of challenges. Thank you for joining us today on the No Gray Areas podcast. If you found this episode moving, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more enriching conversations that challenge, inspire, and uplift. See you next time. No Gray Areas.